thing pops into my mind is like a steel mill, something like that, or a textile mill. But if you say a person is industrious, that doesn't mean they work in a steel mill necessarily, right? What does it mean when you say a person is industrious? What do you think of when someone says that? Huh? I'm hearing somebody mumbling. I don't. What does it mean if a person is industrious? Does it mean they run a business in an industry somewhere? It's a hard worker, someone who gets out there and gets stuff done. They stay busy. They're not laying around the house doing nothing. Now, you don't necessarily have to have a job to be industrious. And if you don't have a job, that doesn't necessarily mean you're lazy, okay? Those are not necessarily the same things. Franklin said, when he was defining what he meant by industry, he said, lose no time, be always employed or active in something useful. Cut off all unnecessary actions. Basically, not a time waster, essentially. Someone who does things, gets things done. And interestingly, you can easily tie this whole idea, in fact, almost all of these virtues, as I said last week, interlace. A person who is industrious has good self-control, so they have temperance. They unless they're psychotic about working, in which case they don't have self-control. They're ordered. They have organization in their life, so they get things done. And you can't randomly get things done because you end up not getting anything done when you do stuff randomly. So they have temperance, they have order, they have resolution, they have purpose, they're diligent, they're determined, to get things done. So they're a lot, and they're probably many of the other virtues also kind of tie into it too. Now, let's not confuse industry or an industriousness with being a workaholic, okay? That's a psychosis. You're sick. If you have to just work 29,000 hours a day, you got a problem, okay? Workaholics are not healthy people. In fact, they tend to have heart attacks or something else. It also doesn't mean that you're a slave to your work. Some people just, that's them. That work is everything to them. And in fact, your career really shouldn't define who you are. People. I was in a hotel in Albuquerque. I was headed back to this end of the country, and I had checked into the hotel on a Friday night to fly out on the airplane the next day. And I was standing in the lobby, and an announcement came over the PA system. Would Mrs. Smith please report to the front desk, you have a telephone call. So this nicely dressed woman, apparently they knew she was in the lobby. This nicely dressed woman walks up to the desk, and the gentleman says, Mrs. Smith? Well, actually it's Dr. Smith, but that doesn't really matter. Actually it did, didn't it? Or she wouldn't have said anything. Actually, it's Dr. Smith. How are you? I am Dr. Smith. No, you are Sarah Smith. Your profession is being a medical doctor. I know a lot of PhDs in technical fields who never introduce themselves as Dr. So-and-so. Never. I'm George. George has a PhD in chemistry. He's renowned. The only time that ever comes up is when he is testifying or writing a paper, a scholarly paper. That doesn't have any meaning at all socially. If it did, I would introduce myself as, I am certified health physicist Joe Lochamy. Well, hi there, certified health physicist Joe Lochamy. That is not what defines me. Unfortunately, a lot of our military people are taught that their military experience defines them. Have you ever noticed how people introduce themselves as Captain Bill Jones? My name is Captain Bill Jones. No, your name is Bill Jones. Your rank is captain. You could say, I am Captain Bill Jones if you must, but your name is not Captain Bill Jones, okay? That's like saying, my name is Mr. Joe Lochamy. No. Your career does not define you. It's an important part of your life, but that's how you earn money, okay? You might get some satisfaction out of it and everything, but that does not define you. So being industrious does not mean that you are your career. However, how you use your time and how well you do your work does define you. Let me give you an example. Negative example. He is lazy. That pretty much defines him, doesn't it? He's a lazy guy. He's a loafer. She's useless. He never finishes anything. That's pretty defining, isn't it? It doesn't say whether you're a doctor or a lawyer or an engineer or a teacher or a construction worker or anything. He's lazy. He's a loafer. He never finishes anything. He's useless. That does define you. I saw a T-shirt when we were on this cruise here a month or two ago. This guy had a T-shirt, and it was great. It said, "I never finish anything. I never finish anything." And it just stopped, ATH. I never finish anything. It's hard to say it. You want to finish the word. And it bothers us, doesn't it, when people don't finish things. Like if I go, I got to do it, you know. Or the land of the free. Anybody disturbed? And the home of the brave. We don't like people like that. We don't want to be around lazy, useless, loafing, people that won't do anything. And on the other side, we have people who are hard workers. He gets things done. She's a real go-getter. See, those are positive, industrious type things. Again, it doesn't say what they're a hard worker at or what things they get done or what they go get. But it defines that person. And when we view those as positives, don't we? You can probably think of other phrases that have to do with industriousness or the lack thereof that actually define a person and says nothing about the actual work that they do. So whether or not you are industrious can define you to the extent that you are industrious. And again, we're not talking about a person who's psychotic here about work and everything. And that, to one extent or another, can run fairly commonly in our society. My wife is just enough psychotic about work to where it's useful. She really can't sit and do nothing for a long time, which is advantageous, actually. I, on the other hand, can sit for days and do nothing, which probably isn't advantageous to her. Anyway, so, there's not, this is psychotic, this is not psychotic. It's that middle area that's kind of cool that can turn into usefulness. My slight obsessive compulsive nature, I don't have the syndrome, but my slightly obsessive compulsive nature makes me a very detailed person, and so that turns out to be to my advantage to get things done and to do details and things well. So a person who is industrious doesn't, they're not clinically psychotic about work or anything, and they're also not clinically lazy either. I guess you've noticed, and I hate this about it, but work is actually good for you. Eesh, I hate that. Think of some things work does for you. What does work do for you? How does it affect you? Doesn't affect you at all. How does work affect you? You're still working, and how old are you now?
No, I'm retired.
Oh, did you?
Yeah,
how dare you?
Yeah. Retirement is harder than working.
Okay. Well, tell me, how did you feel when you worked?
Great.
Okay, it made you feel good, didn't it? What else did you feel?
Like what?
I mean, did it make you feel like you were worth something? you were contributing. Getting money is not a bad thing either as a result of it. Okay, you feel connected. I mean, if you're working with other people and want to, have a connection with other people, I'm the other way around. I'd rather work alone, but made him feel younger, keep you younger, makes you strong physically. If you're doing manual labor, if you're doing mental labor, I guess, if you're an office type, huh?
He's 85 when he retired.
85. So he's like 72 now, right? Okay. All right. Keeps you sharp mentally, keeps you strong physically if it's physical work. I find if I go out and work in my yard all day, I lose several pounds. Whoa. It only takes me an hour or two to regain it. But, it gives you self-worth, self-respect, a sense of and actual accomplishment. Makes you mentally and physically strong. I sleep better if I go out and do manual labor. Mental labor is different, though, sometimes, isn't it? If you are stressed mentally, you have difficulty sleeping. But physical labor is so good for sleep. I used to work for my father's cousin, which I guess made him my second cousin or something. It's either second or once removed or whatever. My son can do all that, but I can't. We built custom kitchen cabinets. And when I would come home at the end of the day, I think we ended at 4:30 because we started at like 7 or something. When I would get home, I would have something to eat. I'd go to bed. Sleep. Had no trouble at all sleeping. Get up after taking a nap, eat some more, and go right back to bed. And get up the next morning at 5 a.m. and go for it. So work can be. It's even been shown to fight depression. If you are suffering from reasonable levels of depression, major depression, maybe nothing can help. But if you're suffering from, let's say, mild depression, getting out and getting some stuff done, working in the yard, just going for a run, getting some exercise, or doing a crossword puzzle or something will help mild depression. Or perhaps maybe even if it's fairly strong, it will lessen it. I don't know. But work is good to fight depression. And it teaches you responsibility for things. I have this work to be done. I need to do this work. I'm going to do this work. Remember we talked a week or two ago about how we say, I guess it was under resolution, I ought to get out and cut the grass, which means I'm not going to get out and cut the grass. I want a nice looking yard. Therefore, I must cut the grass today. I ought to cut the grass. I ain't going to do it. But if I say, I want my yard to look good or to look better, therefore I must get out there today and cut the grass, you're much more likely to do it, aren't you? A little bit of responsibility there. Okay. Believe it or not, and I'm sure you believe it, the Bible has a lot to say about industry and industriousness, both directly and quite often it refers to the opposite of industrious, especially in Proverbs. Proverbs is just full of opposite or negative examples of people who are not industrious. And I'm kind of going to go through in book order, I guess, and a large fraction of them are in Proverbs. But I'm kind of going to go in book order, and then right at the end, I'm going to jump back some in the New Testament, so it won't quite be an exact book order. But I've got quite a few. They're great. They don't require a great deal of comment, but I probably will comment on some of them. You've heard the story about the ant and the grasshopper, where one was lazy and one was it an ant and grasshopper? Is that what it is? Okay. That story actually kind of sort of comes right out of Proverbs 6. If you go to Proverbs 6:6 for several verses there, it says, "Go to the ant, you sluggard." Everybody knows what a sluggard is? It's a lazy person. Go to the ant, you sluggard. Consider its ways and be wise. It has no commander, no overseer or ruler, yet it stores its provisions in summer and gathers its food at harvest. We all know that. How long will you lie there, you sluggard? When will you get up from your sleep? A little sleep, a little slumber, a little folding of the hands to rest. And poverty will come on you like a thief, and scarcity like an armed man. Clearly a reference to not being lazy, right? He's pretty much letting you know that laying around doing nothing is not going to produce value. Now, again, I want to caution you that you don't have to be 110%, which is mathematically impossible, but you don't have to be 100% occupied with labor all day long. You will die. Okay? It will kill you eventually if you don't rest a little bit. But he's talking about somebody who's just flat out lazy. I heard a joke one time about a guy. He had a hole in his roof. And when it would rain in his house. And somebody said, well, why don't you get up there and fix it? He says, well, when it's raining cats and dogs, I can't get up there and fix it. I'll slip and fall off the house. And when it's not raining, I don't need to fix it. Okay, when are you going to fix it then? So he had a good excuse for not fixing his roof. And this is sort of what they're talking about here. This person, I just need to rest a little bit, and then maybe this afternoon I'll get out there and do some work. And then the afternoon comes, oh, well, one of my shows came on last night, and I didn't get to see it, so I'm going to watch it on demand. And now it's 3 o'clock in the afternoon. It's getting close to 5 o'clock, so I think I'll just not do it today. And I've done that. I don't know about you, but I've actually done that. That's sad. Okay, Proverbs 10, verses 4 and 5, and then jumping way down to verse 26. It says, lazy hands make for poverty, but diligent hands bring wealth. And in those days, most people worked manually. They didn't have office work in the same sense that we do. They didn't sit at a desk and work. They pretty much, worked with their hands. So, but by analogy, we can bring that forward to our time. Diligent hands bring wealth. He who gathers crops in summer is a prudent son, but he who sleeps during the harvest is a disgraceful son. Jumping down to verse 26. Now, this is an interesting little mental picture. As vinegar to the teeth, you ever had that? It's kind of like putting aluminum foil in your mouth and biting down. Have you ever done that one? It'll shock you if you've got fillings. As vinegar to the teeth and smoke to the eyes, so are sluggards to those who send them. So if you pick a lazy, useless, good-for-nothing guy to go take care of a job and don't know that they're that way, it gets really tedious after a while, doesn't it? You don't want that kind of people working with you or for you. They're useless. And that's what this proverb says. Okay, jumping up another couple of chapters to Proverbs 11, and this has got a number of verses in it. Verse 11, verse 14, verses 24 and 25, and verse 27. So I got a lot of them in there. Those who work their land will have abundant food, but those who chase fantasies have no sense. You know anybody that's just always chasing fantasies? Got to go down and buy another lottery ticket. I'm going to win it this time. You got one chance in 450 million of winning. You're much more likely to get run over by a car and struck by lightning in the same day than to win a significant amount of money on the lottery. Yes, but so-and-so, yeah, they did, but you're not going to. I mean, somebody does win, but you're not going to, okay? It's not going to happen. If you buy a $1 lottery ticket every minute of your entire life, 24 hours a day, you don't even have one chance in 2 of winning multi-millions of dollars. If you do it every day of your life, it's just not going to happen. Okay, so those who chase vanities have no sense. From the fruit of their lips, people are filled with good things, and the work of their hands brings them reward. Diligent hands will rule, but laziness ends. They translate it forced labor. Lazy hands end in forced labor. In other words, slavery. Now, that doesn't mean everybody who's a slave is lazy, but what he's saying is you won't have any, you won't be an independent person. You'll be an indentured servant or even a slave because you just won't have anything. You're too lazy. Now, how can you imagine a lazy slave? I bet they don't do well either, do they? They probably had a hard time. The lazy do not, this one I love because it's odd. The lazy do not roast any game, but the diligent feed on the riches of the hunt. You know, when I first thought about that, I thought, okay, they get back to the house with the rabbit and they don't even bother to gut it and cook it. They're just too tired. Okay, I'm afraid that's not what it means. It means they didn't even go hunting at all. So whether they went hunting or not, they are not having dinner because they're too lazy to take care of business. Proverbs 13:4, a sluggard's appetite is never filled, but the desires of the diligent are fully satisfied. Proverbs 14:23, all hard work brings a profit. Now, what's the opposite here? All hard work brings a profit, but mere talk leads only to poverty. Have you ever met somebody that's got tons of plans to do things? Doesn't do any of it. Got plans though, man. What are you going to do? I'm going to go out and I'm going to do this and this and this and this, and I'm going to do this, and we're going to make a lot of changes here at the house. You ever watch HGTV where they do these house renovations and everything? And people are looking for a house to renovate. And it surprises me how often they will go into a house and go, well, this house is going to require some extensive renovation. I don't want it. Okay, you just said you wanted to renovate it. You want to renovate a house, but you don't want to renovate a house. Yeah, I was looking for a turnkey house that I could renovate. That doesn't make sense. You got plans, but you don't want to do anything. So this person is engaging in mere talk, and talk with no action leads to poverty, it says. I've met people who say, you know, I really need to start investing. I got to get started investing. I ought to invest. When's that going to happen? Never. Since I don't want to be dirt poor and have to live off of minimal income when I retire, I must begin investing 10% of my income my next paycheck. Now, that doesn't mean you wait until the next paycheck, does it? You go down to Scottrade and you open an investment account so that when you get your paycheck in 3 days, you can put 10% of it in there. So see, that requires some action on you, doesn't it? Industriousness doesn't just talk about good stuff. I used to do a lot of QA plans for DOE. I've probably done 10, 15 QA plans around the country for DOE at various places. The vast majority of the time, I would come up with this gorgeous, you know it was gorgeous, this gorgeous QA plan for this organization. That thick, you know. Some of them came out this thick, and I said, that's impossible to do. We'll reduce it down to this. And they would go, thank you very much, and put lots of money in my pocket, which I appreciated very much. And I would go back a few months later, and I'd say, how's that QA plan working out for you? It's over there on the shelf. Well, are you using it? Well, it's over there on the shelf. Yeah, there's our QA plan. What are you doing with it? Well, it's right there. It's right there. That's our QA plan. I actually did a QA plan for one organization at Los Alamos. It was quite complex. They had a lot of technical stuff going on. First time ever and only time, they lived inside that QA plan every day. Something got implemented or checked or verified or corrected every day. People say, well, they had a lot of problems. No, everybody has a lot of problems. You know, this did not happen and was supposed to. How do we, okay, first of all, we go make it happen. Now we do the necessary explanations of how we are going to make it happen in the future, and we're going to check on it in 3 months to see if we actually got that to work that way. That's how you use a QA plan, is you actually fold back stuff. A QA plan is not just paperwork, by the way. It's not just a volume on the shelf, which a lot of people thought it was. That's our QA plan right over there. No, QA plan is supposed to make you better at what you do. And this is the same thing here. We don't just chase fantasies. This is my plan for retirement over here. Have you made any investments yet? Nope. This is my plan for how I'm going to have the house rebuilt and redesigned. Have you made any progress? No, it's only been 5 years since I came up with the plan. Haven't done a thing, but that's the plan. Okay, you're not industrious. You're just a dreamer. Okay. Craving of a sluggard. This is verse 25 of chapter 21. The craving of a sluggard will be the death of him, because his hands refuse to work. Just all he does is just wish and want. Jeremiah 48:10 is kind of scary. Jeremiah says, "A curse, or cursed be, anyone who is lax in doing the Lord's work." We're not just talking about everyday work here, career work, or money where you earn money or where you maintain your house. This is talking here about the Lord's work. In fact, the actual word here is Jehovah's work. Are you industrious in that? Jeremiah, and that's different for every person, by the way. When I was growing up, I bet some of you experienced this too. We went door knocking. I hated that. I would rather have been beaten with a rubber hose than to go do that by somebody who wasn't too violent. So doing the Lord's work is not the same for everybody. It's different for everybody. By the way, Walker Smith did something very nice for me. My son and his family and 3 of their friends came in over the weekend, and I had told him about this early, and so he had already approved it, but they wanted to go and do some shooting, which Walker has a good place to do that. Walker was very gracious in offering me the use of his property and his bathrooms when they needed it and things like that. And people say, well, that's not the Lord's work. Yeah, it is. That's my brother sharing what he has with me and my family and friends. That is part of the Lord's work right there. So, there you go. All right, a curse on anyone who is lax in doing the Lord's work. You can also be much more obvious with your work for the Lord, like teaching a class or something, I guess. Okay, Romans 12. Now we're in the New Testament, and there are lots of examples where the word work is used in the New Testament, and sometimes it's not directly related to your industriousness level. The word works comes up a lot, but we're going to kind of skip over those. Romans 12, and this is King James Version. I kind of like it a little bit better here than the NIV. and it's just it's just part of one verse, but I'm going to kind of lead up to it a little bit. This is the chapter where it says, present your bodies a living sacrifice, wholly acceptable unto God, which is your reasonable service. And various translations say different things there. It says, be not conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind, that you may prove what is good and acceptable and perfect, or what is the good, perfect, and acceptable will of God. And then he starts talking about traits that demonstrate the good, acceptable, and perfect will of God. And so jumping down to verse 11, one of those traits is verse 11. Not slothful in business, fervent in spirit, serving the Lord. That doesn't sound religious, does it? Doing the good and acceptable and perfect will of God. If you start looking at the list of things, one of them is not lazy on the job. Wow. That's one of the signs of a person who is doing the good and acceptable and perfect will of God. And it doesn't say not lazy at church. He says not lazy on the job, not slothful in business, fervent in spirit, serving the Lord. 1 Thessalonians 3 and 6 through 13. In the name of the Lord Jesus Christ, we command you, brothers, that sounds pretty strong. We command you, brothers and sisters, to keep away from, to avoid, to shun not to hang around who? Every believer, that's your brother or sister, every believer who is what? Idle and disruptive. Yeah, but that wouldn't be Christian to do that. Yeah, it is too. God doesn't like lazy, useless leeches. And what do you do if your arm dies and gets gangrene and is no longer of any use to you? What do you have to do? What do they do with, we have organs in our body that are considered vestigial. I'm not sure that they're actually vestigial, but who knows? But, your appendix, quite often people have that thing removed, or your tonsils or something. They're not contributing any value. In fact, they're a burden on you. There's a problem with them. Even if your intestines can start acting up, and if they quit working properly and you get cancer or something, they have to cut that out. They don't just leave it because it's part of me, I want to keep it. They cut it out of you. And the Lord says, if you've got somebody who's idle and disruptive in the family, you got to stay away from them. They're going to damage the family. That doesn't sound very nice, does it? Oh, but we need to, be Christian about it and love him. Okay, loving doesn't mean letting people get away with everything. Loving means caring about that person enough to tell them, look, if you can't get your act together, you're not going to be part of this. You're not going to get all the benefits of the family. We're not going to allow that. Love you very much. Want good things for you. That's what that means. But we can't keep you around. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that the person is a drain on the church's finances because they need the money. But it does mean if they are useless and will not even attempt to do anything of value that they can do, then you need not to have anything to do with them. Are they just a black hole for the value of the church? Okay, keep away from brothers and sisters who are idle and disruptive, and does not live according to the teaching you received from us. For you yourselves know how you ought to follow our example. That we're still in 2 Thessalonians. We were not idle when we were with you, nor did we eat anyone's food without paying for it. This is Paul saying, when I came into your town, I did not take money from you or food without paying for it. On the contrary, we worked day and night, laboring and toiling. He's not talking about toiling in the vineyard of the Lord here. So that we would not be a burden to any of you. We did this not because we do not have the right to such help, but in order to offer ourselves as a model for you to imitate. For even when we were with you, we gave you this rule. This is hard. That was a parenthetical expression that I just put in. This is hard. Here's the rule. The one who is unwilling to work shall not eat. That's horrible, isn't it? We hear that some among you are idle and disruptive. Same words again. They are not busy. They are busy bodies. That's a nice one. Such people we command and urge in the Lord Jesus Christ to settle down and earn the food they eat. As for you, brothers and sisters, never tire of doing what's good. Those are hard words, aren't they? I believe that's called tough love. If you are too lazy to work, all right, there's a difference between not being able to work and too lazy to work. There is a difference between having emotional problems that prevent you from being able to work and not being willing to work. There are big differences between those, so don't misunderstand, all right? Who was it? The comedian Ron White once said, he was talking about some of the social welfare programs, and he said, if you're too lazy to work, I want you to starve. But if your idea of a great time in the afternoon is to eat a box of crayons, he says, I'll feed you till you die. Not crayons, but he's saying there's something wrong with you really bad, because if your idea of a great time is to eat a box of crayons, he says, I'll feed you till you die. something other than crayons. And I think that's what the Lord wants us to do. People who can't take care of themselves and would if they could, we should take care of those people. But people who are just useless and no good and just couldn't care less, oh, somebody will take care of me, you know. If they're Christian, they'll look after me. I'm sorry, buddy. You know, people say, well, that's just so unkind, isn't it? Sounds like it, doesn't it? Do you want to be an enabler and just let this person be? You know, I'm an alcoholic. You should provide me with alcohol because I'm sick. Sounds like a Christian duty to me. Doesn't it to you? No, you don't do that. You keep it for yourself. All right. Just a little side joke there. All right. So those who the one who is unwilling to work shall not eat. We hear that some of you are idle and disruptive. They're busy. They're not busy. They're busybodies. They need to earn the food they eat. 2 Timothy 2:15. This one you've heard many times before, and it's usually used in a slightly different way. Do your best to present yourself to God as one approved, a worker who does not need to be ashamed, who rightly handles the word of truth. Okay, where does this come up here at Highland View? A lot. What is that? That's used as a foundational verse for something here at Highland View. An entire and work, and you'll get your pay. This verse is the foundational verse for the Awana program. A worker, A-W. I can never get that. And not ashamed, and I can never get that other word in there. But the N-A part is not ashamed. This is the verse where that comes from. I can't remember what the middle word is that they choose to use there. He says, a worker does not need to be ashamed. You should be a worker, whether you're doing the Lord's work or whether you're doing other work. Hebrews 6:10 through 12. God is not unjust. He will not forget your work and the love you have shown him as you have helped his people and continue to help them. We want each of you to show this same diligence to the very end, so that what you hope for may be fully realized. We do not want you to become lazy, but to imitate those who through faith and patience inherit what has been promised. Now he uses the words like work and diligence and being lazy and things like that. And that was my original intent to talk about that there. Something jumped out at me here just a while ago. God is not unjust. He will not forget your work and the love you have shown him. In fact, I read something on this discussion. You know, we've talked about how good works don't save you. And then people say, well, then I don't need to do good works. And then we've shown you many times that that's not true. Your works in the Lord show your love for the Lord. That's what he just said right there. God will not forget your work and the love you have shown him. Your work for God shows your love for him. Guys, if you never did anything nice for your wife, never, how loved do you think she would feel? Better yet, how long do you think your marriage would last? Wives, the same thing. If you never did anything nice to your husband, even though you say you love him, how long do you think that relationship would last? Not very long. We show our love for God by doing. It's a natural outflow. If you love God, you will do good things that show your love for him. You will reflect God to the rest of the world. This is why the book of James says, you know, you say you have faith and no works. I will show you my faith by my works. You may have faith and your works could be completely hidden. Okay? Wow, we're getting everybody right now. But anyway, those are still important, but they're not what save you. They are a demonstration, a reflection of your salvation. So he says you should be diligent in doing that sort of thing. I'm down to my last verse, and it is not in order. Colossians comes before Hebrews, so that's why it's out of order. Colossians 3:23. Whatever you do, work at it with all your heart, that is diligently, as working for the Lord, not for human masters, or your employer, if you wish to say that, since you know that you will receive an inheritance from the Lord as a reward. It is the Lord Christ you are serving when you work. When you're working, you are serving Christ if you're doing it properly. That doesn't mean you have to walk around with your Bible in one hand and your calculator in the other hand on your engineering job. That's not what he's talking about. He's actually talking about when you're walking around with your calculator on your engineering job, you're doing a good job of engineering or nursing or teaching or whatever you're doing. You do an outstanding job at that. Whatever you do, do it as if you're working for Christ, for God. Both, you know. You're doing this to bring glory to God, and you don't have to keep walking around, I'm doing this to the glory of God, I'm doing this to the glory of God. People don't like that, you know. So, whatever you do, do it as if you're working for the Lord. How to be industrious? Plan. And I'm not going to tell you how to plan. Some people need to plan it by the hour. Some people can just have a list of things to do. Some people can just keep a mental tally in their head. You know, plan what you're going to do, and then do it. Reduce distractions and time wasters. Do I need to mention time wasters and distractions? Checking your email every 30 minutes all day long? How many important emails other than at work? In fact, how many important emails do you get at work every 30 minutes? Some of you might get a few. 99% of all emails that come to me, and I get a lot, are delete, 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 delete. 99% of them. And there I see it, delete, 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 delete. I just wish they wouldn't come. But I can't stand to have them in the thing. Spending time on the internet, playing games. There's nothing wrong with doing that. Just don't waste a lot of time. Watching TV too much. There's just a lot of things that we can do that create distractions. So we need to plan. We need to reduce the distractions and wasting. We need to have a worthy goal in mind. By the way, even recreation can be a worthy goal. Okay? Just saying. And one person that I read suggested something, and it may or may not work for you. He suggested implement something called the 48-12 rule. Work on the project for 48 minutes, take a 12-minute break. At the end of 12 minutes, go right back to the project, work for it. 48 minutes, take a 12-minute break. That may or may not work for you. I find that I work better if I work in chunks when I get inspired. I can work for 3 or 4 hours straight, and then I take an hour's break, you know. And then go back to it. I used to not get wound up until about 3 o'clock in the afternoon on my job. I would trudge through what had to be done, and then I would really get revved up about 3 o'clock, and I'd get about 18 hours worth of work done in 2 hours, you know, that sort of thing. So everybody's different in that. So you might want to have what they're suggesting here is take periodic breaks, whatever that means to you, but don't let that be the majority of the day. Let the work be the majority of the day, and the breaks be the minority of the day. Okay. Any comments on industrious? Anybody think you shouldn't be industrious? Anybody? Okay. It's going to offer the opportunity for a little bit of rebuttal there. Next week we'll talk about sincerity, and hopefully that will be useful to us. I think it's obvious that you don't want to be an insincere person. And let us have our benediction then. Whatever you do, may you work at it with all your heart as working for the Lord and not for human masters. Our program.